Letters from the front. With the Victorian Rifles. The following is an extract from a letter received from Lance Corporal Clinton of Barfold, dated Colesberg, the 22nd of April 1901. Quote, C Squadron has done some fighting at last and made a good start too, 57 of us having driven 300 Boers out of Philipstone on the 12th of February, with none of our number wounded. But next day some of our officers and men were wounded when scouting. We then joined Plumer's column and followed up the Boers. Jack Siddle was wounded in the ankle on the 15th at Haut Kraal. We fired 5 shells, 15-pounders, into De Wet's rear guard on the 18th, and we kept following and had a running fight nearly all day on the 23rd. They started firing at long range, but we kept riding on. The Royal Horse Artillery galloped up to us and started shelling the kopje with 15-pounders and pom-poms. Then we galloped up the hill only to see the Boers fleeing across the veld. We chased them for about 4 miles, and from a low kopje we saw them on the flat below us. We opened a heavy rifle fire on them and they returned our fire, but without effect. Then they started off, leaving swags, rifles, and saddles and men on slow horses. These we took prisoner. I was galloping out in the front line and came upon 2 Boers in a gutter. I covered them with my rifle, but they threw up their hands, and they were then taken back to the main body with some miles behind. We got close up to their guns and carts when they opened fire on us with their 15-pounder and pom-poms, so we had to take cover among the rocks as our big guns were some distance in the rear. There were only about 50 of us, Victorian infantry rifles, in the front line. A number of our horses knocked up, but we kept slowly following them until dark, when they stopped to have some food. D Squadron, VIR, got close up to them and fired, giving them such a surprise that they ran off, leaving their 2 big guns with the mules in them. We got 130 prisoners and 2 killed. Then we came on to Hopetown, a nice little Dutch town, and had a day's rest. Then we started again on the 1st of March. We got 33 prisoners and 50 horses. We are now at Colesberg and do not know where we will go next. We're not with Plumer now, but with Colonel Henniker of the Coldstream Guards. They have been with us since we left Muggersfontein. They are regarded as one of England's best regiments, but are lost out here after the Boers, as they are foot soldiers. My horse knocked up yesterday, the one I bought from Victoria, a fine upstanding bay, 16.5 hands high. I can tell you I was sorry to lose him. I expect I will have to ride a Boer pony now. I've got 1 stripe and am a Lance Corporal. I saw Bill Clark of Black Hill with the Bushmen, but I've not seen Walker Thompson. He was always out on patrol when I went to their camp. He's a Lance Sergeant now. The country is not much, plenty of rocks and thorny bushes. We just lay down at night with our overcoats round us. We have had a few wet nights. Mrs. J. Harris of Forest Street has received a letter from her brother, Private C.A. Salmon of Chewton, who was wounded at the Wilmensrust engagement. The letter was written at Middelburg on June the 20th, 1901, and we extract the following. Quote, I expect you have seen in the newspapers an account of the dreadful calamity that has overtaken several of our chaps. I was wounded, but not severely, although it was a close shave. The bullet grazed my cheek and took away part of my ear. It was very painful. I may lose my hearing in that ear, as it has affected the nerve, but the doctor thinks he will have me all right in about a month. I will explain the circumstances of the disaster, and you will see it was pure luck that any of us escaped. On the 12th of June, there were about 300 of us, Victoria Mounted Rifles, out as a flying column. We had been away from the main column for 3 days, and I had a lot of fighting during that time. We were going back to join the main column about 12 miles away when they sent word by heliograph to camp where we were. That night we camped on a small rise, and all afternoon the Boers were at us, and we shelled them with our 2 pom-poms. We thought all safe that night, and I had just seen my boss, Major McKnight, was comfortable in his tent and went to make my own bed and have a lay down to read the papers you sent me. I was just spreading out my overcoat on my doss when volley after volley came over us from the north end of the camp. The bullets flew around us just like hailstones, and there was such a sight as I never wished to see again in all my life. My God, it was awful. The screams of horses and men as they were hit and the yelling of the Boers was frightful to listen to. I grabbed my rifle and went into camp, but everything was pitch black. All of a sudden I got one on the side of my face, and I spun around like a top and fell. I soon got up again, and the man that shot me was about 10 yards off. I got hold of my rifle and shot him dead, and then about half a dozen of our men ran past me. 4 of them dropped almost at my feet, 2 dead and 2 badly hit. One of them spoke to me. It was poor Bert Hendy. You might remember him, the tall young chap that was one of my tent mates at Langwarrin. He said, "Goodbye, Charlie, I'm done for." I dragged him to my bed and he gave me a message for his mother and then died. I was just about mad with the horror of it all and the loss of blood, so I just stood up when suddenly a Boer jammed a rifle against my breast and said, "Hands up, you British cow." I put them up and he ordered me to go where the other prisoners were. I told him I was too faint to walk as I was hit. He said he was very sorry and put his arms around me and carried me there and got me a drink of water and a blanket, then got one of our sergeants to bandage my head. They took us about a mile and a half out of camp while they got the wagons and carted their wounded and dead away. They kept us for about an hour and then wished us good night and better luck next time. We then went back to attend to our dead and wounded. It was a fearful list, 21 dead, 46 wounded. The poor fellows who lost their lives were buried next morning in one long trench, and us wounded were put under the shade till help came in the morning. We were then put in ox wagons and had 3 days' trek to Middelburg, where we are now as comfortable as bugs in a rug. So, here I am in the port city of Echuca. Now I say a port city because in the old days, before Federation I believe, you had to come in through a customs port from New South Wales to Victoria, and Echuca, being on the mighty Murray, had a port. So how's that? Anyway, it's what are we up to? It's 11:45. I was thinking of Swan Hill today. That's a bloody long way up the freeway to the top of Victoria. If you guys are overseas, you don't know, Victoria's shaped a bit like a V. So, you know, as we get further north, the state gets wider. Anyway, see how we go. Got Pyramid Hill after this, but I think I found it. See a cannon over there. Well, a quick squiz at that. Squizzy Taylor, they call it in Australia. He was a mobster. Squizzy means to have a look at. The American Hotel for our American friends. So I reckon I can see that lantern. Can you see it? Which tells us that's probably a Boer War. Water towers stopped here, were here to provide Echuca with a reticulated supply. Now the Murray River is a big river. Used to have steamships on it. Might still, I think you can still take tourist steamships. This cannon is a side gun from the battleship Nelson. (1814). She came to Victoria in 1868 as one of the ships of the Victorian Navy. Look at that. 1867. Sir. Yeah. I mean, we're lucky to keep these things. I think in South Africa, when I get there, I'm going to find these sorts of things have been stolen. Wow. Even a date. No, maybe not. Fantastic, eh? I wonder if that fired at the French. English and the French always seem to be squaring off against each other. So there's a big by the look of it, World War One monument. Isn't it tragic, you know? Like, we might see one or two names listed in these little places for the Boer War, but when you get to the Great War, there's monuments like this. There's every little town lost, not one or two men. Anyway, yeah, this is a good one. This is a good Boer War monument. I'm seeing it already. I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Ooh. 1899 to 1901, the South African War monument rededication, unveiled the 10th of January 1992 by Bruce Ruxton, OBE, State President of the RSL. Now, Bruce Ruxton was a bit of a, well, he's an old-fashioned Australian, usual homophobe, bigot, but, you know, he loved his mates in the RSL. So we've got presented to the residents of the Borough Council to commemorate the services of our citizen soldiers in the South African War, 1899 to 01. You got Captain C.J. Wilson, you got Sergeant J.H. Rule, Sergeants H.A. Carans, Sergeants W.K. Grady, Corporal R.M. McGrouter, Corporal Pitt, your privates E. Karang and Earnshaw, QMS, Queen's Majesty's Service, don't know what that is, E. Earnshaw, Troopers, R. Jordan, D. Jordan, probably brothers, well, there's a lot of them, more troopers, C. Howe, J.P. Toner, R. Smith, Philip, Davey, McPherson, Rofe, Tulloch, Bell, Wallace, Widburn, Ganter, Fortescue, W.H. Turner, W. Parr, W. Collins, W.J. Lawton. And there's that lantern we've got to know now. I want to check that it's filming. So, rededication. I'd say this is original, the marble, and they've just touched it up a bit when old Brucey came along and gave it his nod of approval, I suppose. So we're lucky today because all the monuments we've seen are outside. We don't have to go into any churches or get into any memorial halls, although there was one at Karang. Now Karang's halfway up to Swan Hill, and I'm tempted, and I actually rang the Karang Council during the week. A woman called Rebecca actually rang me back. You wouldn't believe it, that one of the council employees rang back. She didn't know about the, there's a youth rooting the cannon mouth. Yeah, she didn't know about the board in the Karang Memorial Hall. She thought it was in the RSL Hall, but my sources say it's in the Memorial Hall. But anyway, it's just a wooden name plaque. But there is a monument outside the hall for a fallen soldier in the Boer War. So